My name is Natalie, and today I'm going to be talking about The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. So I was recommended this book by two different people, one of them my same age group, one a little older than me. And at first I was skeptical. I was looking at the books that they brought to school and they were this thick, over 1,000 pages long, and I'm thinking, how in the world are you reading something this big? This is insane and crazy, and I don't think I could ever get into something like this. And as I finally decided, okay, I'm going to read this book. And I got it, Barnes & Noble, and I brought it home, and I was like, okay, it's going to sit on my shelf for a little while because I have to get through all the books on my book calendar this year, but I will add it to next year's book calendar. And so I did. And when I first started reading the book, I was like, okay, we met this one character, and they're doing this, and wait, where did that character go? He was just here. And then the next chapter was a whole new character. And it's like, okay, I'm starting to like this character. And the POV switched again. And I have no idea what's going on. And I printed out a guide. So Natalie's Guide to the Stormlight Archive series, which is the name of this series. This is the first book in the Stormlight Archive series, if you did not know. And I was just overall very confused of what was going on. But that didn't last long. So let me give a quick plot overview of The Way of Kings. So in its very, very core, the plot is pretty simple. There are two groups of people, the Parshendi and the Alethi, who are at war with one another, which seems like a pretty simple plot. What makes this book so complicated in its nature is the way that it's told. So the Alethi are kind of people who are more tan skin, dark hair, and the Parshendi are kind of these big creatures that can grow armor on themselves, and they communicate with one another through different songs that they sing, and it doesn't really matter where one Parshendi is from another one, they all continue the same song at the same time, which is pretty creepy. But anyway, this story has a few main points of view. The main point of view is Kaladin. So Kaladin is a surgeon's apprentice gone soldier gone slave. So in his beginnings, he was a surgeon's apprentice, so he's very good at binding injuries and being able to cure people of ailments and knowing when to recognize what someone is sick with. He's very, very skilled at that job, even though he was just an apprentice. They wanted to send him away early to go to a special surgeon's school because of how well he was progressing. But as the story goes, he ends up being a soldier, and the first time you meet him on the battlefield when, through another character's point of view, his name is Sen, and you find out that he is a squad leader and he is very good at his job. He knows the battlefield very well, and it's kind of amazing that someone who cured people and who tried to help make wounds is suddenly making those wounds and hurting people. But he is very courageous and also very kind to all of his soldiers. He takes in a bunch of young children who are around 14 to 15, and in this place they take kids as young as 9 to go fight in that war. So it's kind of brutal and awful, but he finds a way to try to keep them all safe. They also call him Kaladin Stormblessed, which means that his squad is seen to be as protected by what they call like the Storm Fate, or the Storm Father, which is kind of like their god. Anyway, in the second chapter, when we meet Kaladin, or kind of not really chapter but next part, we see that Kaladin is a slave, and it's 8 months later. And then the way that the story fills in the plot points is by slowly filling them in and going back in the past and then going in the future and past and future, so you kind of have to figure it out. I love this way of storytelling. It really keeps you on your toes, really makes you interested in the story itself. Now, I mentioned that there are other points of view. There's also Shallan, a girl who is coming from her father's house or mansion and is trying to reclaim her family's name as they are falling into poverty. She's doing this by trying to swap out a soul caster from a princess. So kind of everybody's life in this thing is impacted by the war. The princess, her uncle is another one of the points of view. His name is Dalinar, and he is a high prince, meaning someone who is kind of second in command from the king, so not an actual prince, but someone who is in charge of military and battle strategics, and he is having visions of the past in which he keeps hearing this thing, unite them, and he doesn't know what that means, and kind of the course of the book he tries to figure out what it means. And these characters kind of intersect in the ways that they're related to one another, not in the sense of blood relation, but in the way that their lives are impacted by what's happening around them and the world that they're in, and the war between the Alethi and Parshendi. So Kaladin, Dalinar are both Alethi, and Shallan is from another place. There is a map at the beginning of the book that kind of explains this. Another thing that should be noted in this book is that status in the society is told by eye color. If you have light eyes, you are seen as a higher in society. If you have dark eyes, you are seen as lower in society, and you can't get as many good jobs. There is also a type of system, I can't think of the name right now, but there's different nons. So first non, second non, third non. For both lights and darks, they actually do call the peoples Bright Lord and Bright Lady. So it very much is with the eye color, and there's a lot of different eye colors in this thing, which is pretty cool. Also, another thing that's really interesting and neat about this story is that there are emotions that take on physical forms. These are called spren. For instance, there's anger spren, when people get angry, or even mourning spren, or if you get a cut on the battlefield, there might be pain spren. So really, it's emotions taking on a physical form, which is super, super cool. Everything in this book was very, very thought out and very unique. I've never read anything quite like it, and as I've said in my book tour video, which should be up pretty soon, this book, when I finished it, I felt like I had just taken the journey of a lifetime, and I felt so sad and so, I don't want to say empty because it's going to make you think that it's not a good book, but I felt empty because I had experienced such a wonderful thing and suddenly it was gone. And I immediately bought the next 2 books and was like, you know what? I don't care that I have a book calendar I need to adhere to. I need to read these books because this book left such an impact on my life. And I couldn't ignore that. Another beautiful thing that this book does is talks about really important things in life. One of those things is life itself. Now, this next passage that I'm going to read you is going to be kind of a spoiler, and a pretty big one at that, so I'm just going to let you know that right here, this exact moment, is going to be a spoiler alert. Now that you are forewarned, I'm going to read you the passage. It said, Dalinar turned to him. Then the High Prince laid a hand on Kaladon's shoulder, the gauntlet gleaming blue, mismatched with the rest of his slate-gray armor. I don't know what has been done to you. I can only guess that your life has been like, but know this. You will not be a bridgeman in my camp, nor will you be slaves. But what's a man's life worth? Dalinar asked softly. The slave masters say it is worth only 2 emerald broams, Kaladin said, frowning. And what do you say? A life is priceless, he said immediately, quoting his father. Dalinar smiled, wrinkled lines extending from the corners of his eyes. Coincidentally, that is the exact same value as a shard blade, so today You and your men sacrificed to buy me 2,600 priceless lives, and all I had to repay you with was a single priceless sword. I call that a bargain." "You really think it was a good trade, don't you?" Kaladin said, amazed. Dalinar smiled in a way that seemed strikingly paternal. "For my honor? Unquestionably. Go and lead your men to safety, soldier. Later tonight, I will have some questions for you." Kaladin glanced at Sadeas, who held his new blade in awe. "You said you'd take care of Sadeas. This is what you intended?" "This wasn't taking care of Sadeas," Dalinar said. "This was taking care of you and your men. I still have work to do today." This passage emulates the themes in the book that life is pretty much the most beautiful thing that anyone could be given, and a lot of the things that Kaladin deals with in this book is that he is fighting that line between saving lives and destroying them. I mean, he was a surgeon's apprentice, and now he is, fighting on the battlefield as a slave. What it's called is a bridgeman. So basically, he carries bridges for the army. By the way, we are now out of the spoiler section. I won't talk more about the ending anymore. But I find that it's very important that this book had so many beautiful values of what life is actually like, taking it into a fantasy world where people can definitely appreciate it. What Brandon Sanderson writes is epic fantasy. When they confronted him about these ideas, they said, "Okay, we want you to write epic fantasy series in the same world," and that's the Cosmere. This story takes place in Roshar, which is in part of the Cosmere. And if you see different parts of the Cosmere intersect with other parts, and it's quite amazing how much Brandon Sanderson can think of and his ideas. As a writer, I am blown away with his ability to create worlds and to truly stick with them and really understand his characters. I mean, Kaladin was consistent throughout all 1,000 pages, and I'm sure within the next book he's going to be consistent too, and all the other characters are. Every character is so well-rounded, diverse, very different from the rest. There are no two characters in this book that are exactly the same. I mean, this guy might mention a random name and it might come back 10 chapters later, and you're thinking, well, that person wasn't very important, and then you realize that it was supposed to bring up this issue or supposed to make you realize something about this world. This world is very well crafted, and honestly, I've heard people say, it's a lot. How could you even be reading something like this? It's crazy. Like, this is so many pages, and the language at the beginning is a little hard to understand, and it takes you a while to get into it. And I told them, it's worth it. Once you get inside this book and you read it, you might think it's a lot, but I can just remember sitting at the table and trying to sneak as many pages as possible. And it's been a while since I felt that way about a book. If you have that feeling inside yourself that you're like, wow, I want to go back and keep reading it, even though, I shouldn't be, and you try and sneak to read, or you try and hide somewhere just to try and get a few more pages, or those people who are in school and like have the textbook over the book that they're reading. That's how I felt about this book. Like, I wanted to keep reading it even when I wasn't supposed to. And when you feel that way about a book, it's something special. So I definitely recommend this book. Another thing that should be mentioned about this book is how real it truly all feels. Everything in the book, besides all the magic and crazy things that happen, could actually happen in real life. There are plenty of betrayals that go down, plenty of people who are not who you thought they were, and plenty of real and true emotions. And that's kind of the reason I really liked the Spren, because they truly show the emotions of people even when they're trying to hide it. And just everything in it, from Kaladin's backstory to the way that he experiences his life and all of the, the things about slavery and how these people interact with one another, and how Kaladin kind of makes them understand that there's more to life than just moping and sitting around, and that people can make a difference. To, Shallan's inner feelings and her conflictions and what she really wants from the world, to Dalinar's visions, even though they're kind of magical and hard to understand, there's still some realness and trueness in the way that he is trying, that other people try and make him feel that he's going insane, that they challenge him, and just the way that everything goes down in this book feels very drastically real, and is what part makes it such a good and well-told story. There's one more thing I want to say about this book before I conclude this video, and that is life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. And I hope you read Brandon Sanderson's A Way of Kings and the Stormlight Archive. Bye!